Safina was just a little girl when she first started dreaming about her wedding day. In her small village, they didn't have much, but her grandmother had an old second-hand TV that played wedding films. Safina would sit on the floor, eyes wide, watching brides walk down the aisle in beautiful white gowns. She didn't have fancy notebooks, so she drew wedding dress designs on the back of old newspapers, while her grandmother worked beside her, sewing clothes for villagers. Safina believed that one day she too would wear a dress like that, a dress made with love, sparkle, and hope. Years passed, but her dream never faded. Even when life got hard, and others said she wasn't rich or classy enough to think of such things, she held on to that little girl's dream. Then came Esosa, kind, soft-spoken, and full of love. He saw the strength in Safina. One evening, he knelt before her, tears in his eyes, and asked her to marry him. Safina's heart swelled with joy. As he slipped the ring on her finger, she smiled through her tears and whispered to herself, "Finally, I will wear the dress I drew when I was 9. It wasn't just about a wedding. It was about becoming the woman she always imagined, walking into a future full of love and pride. That moment with Esosa wasn't just a proposal. It was a promise that her dream was finally within reach. A promise that after all her waiting, all her hoping, the girl who once dreamed in white was about to become a bride. Safina was full of excitement the first time she went to meet Esosa's family. She wore her best dress, carried a small gift, and kept reminding herself to smile and be polite. She knew they were wealthy, and she didn't come from much, but her heart was full of love, and she believed that was enough. As she stepped into the grand mansion, everything looked like a dream. Shiny floors, tall ceilings, and expensive furniture, but the warm welcome she hoped for never came. Esosa's mother, Mama Isokan, stood at the top of the stairs, watching Safina closely. Her eyes didn't show kindness, they showed judgment. She slowly walked down, her heels clicking loudly, and when she reached Safina, she didn't smile. Instead, she looked her up and down like she was a stain on the floor. Then, with a sharp voice, she said, "So you think you're good enough for my son just because you know how to smile and sew clothes?" Her words cut deep. Safina stood frozen, heart pounding, feeling small in front of this powerful woman. Esosa quickly stepped in. He held Safina's hand and tried to speak gently to his mother. "Mama, please. Safina is kind. She loves me. Isn't that what matters?" But Mama Isokan shook her head. "Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't build legacies. She's not our class. She won't fit into this family." Her voice was cold. Every word felt like a slap. Esosa begged again, saying Safina was the best thing that ever happened to him. But his mother wouldn't listen. Her mind was made up. Safina felt her heart breaking. She had always dreamed of being welcomed with open arms. Instead, she was treated like she didn't belong, like she wasn't enough. But even as her eyes filled with tears, she stood tall. She knew who she was. She knew her love was real. And even if Mama Isokan couldn't see her worth, she wouldn't let anyone take away the love she and Esosa shared. Not even a mother's hate could break her spirit. The wedding was just 1 week away, and everything was finally coming together. Safina could barely sleep the night before because her best friend Zubaida was bringing the finished wedding dress. It wasn't just any dress. It was her dream dress. Zubaida had poured her heart into making it. It was white, soft, and shining like a star. The dress had beautiful hand-beaded designs and smooth satin lining. When Safina saw it, she gasped. It was perfect. Her eyes filled with tears as she held it close to her chest. This was the dress she had imagined since she was a little girl, the one she sketched on paper while watching wedding movies on an old TV. Now, it was real. She spun around in joy, hugged Zubaida and whispered, "It's more than I ever dreamed of." That night, Safina gently hung the dress in the living room, right where she could see it every time she walked past. She even smiled in her sleep, dreaming of walking down the aisle, of Esosa's face when he would see her in it. But the next morning, everything changed. Safina woke up to the smell of smoke. She ran to the living room with panic in her heart. What she saw broke her completely. The dress, the beautiful, hand-beaded, satin-lined dress, was gone. In its place was a pile of ashes on the floor. The air still smelled like something had just burned. Her hands shook as she stepped closer. Among the ashes was a small folded note. She picked it up, and her heart dropped as she read the cruel words. Now go marry him in rags. Safina couldn't breathe. Her knees gave way, and she dropped to the floor. Her heart was beating loudly in her ears. Who could be this wicked? Who would do such a thing? Deep down she knew. She didn't need proof. Only one person hated her enough to destroy something so precious. Mama Isakin. But Mama didn't scream, didn't threaten. No, she attacked silently, like a snake in the dark. Zubaida arrived minutes later and found Safina still on the floor, clutching the note, her face blank and full of pain. Zubaida screamed in shock, looking at the black pile of ashes. No, who did this? She cried. But Safina said nothing. She just stared ahead. No tears, no word, just silence. The kind of silence that comes after your heart has been torn apart. The dress was gone. The dream was burnt. But in that moment, something deeper inside Safina began to stir. She didn't know it yet, but this fire wasn't the end. It was the beginning of her rising. Safina didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even ask why. After seeing the ashes of her dream wedding dress, she quietly walked to her room and closed the door. She locked it, sat on the edge of her bed, and just stared at the wall. There were no tears left, only silence. A deep, heavy silence that filled the room like thick smoke. Her heart was in pieces, but she kept them inside. She didn't want anyone to see her pain. She didn't want to give Mama Isakin the satisfaction. Hours passed. The sun rose higher, but Safina didn't move. Her fingers touched the necklace her grandmother gave her years ago. Slowly she stood up and walked to the mirror. Her eyes were tired, her face pale. But in that mirror, something else appeared too. Strength. She looked at her reflection and whispered softly, I may have no dress, but I still have me. Those words gave her power. They reminded her of her grandmother Maimuna, who raised her with stories of women who were broken but never stayed down. Safina remembered how Grandma would sew clothes for people even when her hands were tired, and how she always said, your worth isn't stitched into a gown, it's in how you rise when torn apart. That memory came back so clearly, like her grandmother was standing right beside her. Safina wiped her face, took a deep breath, and stood taller. She opened her closet and pulled out a simple white fabric she once saved for a rainy day. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't satin or hand-beaded, but it was clean, soft, and hers. She held it close and whispered, this will do, because I'm not marrying a Sosa for the dress. I'm marrying him for love, and no fire can burn that. At that moment, something changed in her. The sadness didn't disappear, but it didn't control her anymore. She folded the note that had tried to break her and placed it in a box, not to remember the pain, but to remind herself of her strength. Safina walked out of her room with quiet courage. Zubaida saw her and gasped. Are you okay? She asked. Safina nodded, her voice calm but firm. I'm more than okay. I'm not defeated. I'm getting married, dress or no dress. Nothing can stop me now. And just like that, Safina started to rise. The girl whose dream dress was turned to ashes found a new kind of beauty, one that no one could destroy, not even fire. When Dio heard what had happened, he was shocked. He couldn't believe someone would be so cruel to burn Safina's wedding dress, especially a dress she had dreamed of since childhood. Dio wasn't just any tailor. He used to work with Grandma Maimuna many years ago. He remembered little Safina sitting beside her grandmother, watching them sew with wide, curious eyes. Now, that little girl was about to be a bride, and someone tried to destroy her joy. Dio didn't wait for an invitation. He packed his sewing kit, picked the finest fabric he had saved for something special, and rushed to Safina's house. It was a golden brocade, rich and glowing, the kind of material only royalty wore. As soon as he arrived, he held it up and said, "She burned your dress? Then let's make one the fire could never touch." Safina couldn't believe her eyes. The fabric shimmered like sunlight. It was bold, beautiful, and nothing like the soft white dress she had lost. But when she touched it, she felt warmth, hope, and strength. It was as if the fabric was made to tell her story, not of a weak girl who was hurt, but of a woman who rose even stronger. Without wasting time, Dio got to work. For 2 days and nights, he stitched with heart and memory. Zubaida joined him. Even Grandma Maimuna's old sewing notes helped guide his hands. Safina watched in silence, heart full of emotion. The house that once held ashes now buzzed with purpose and love. By the end of 48 hours, the dress was ready. And it was not just a dress, it was a masterpiece. The golden brocade hugged Safina's figure like it was made by the stars. Every thread whispered of resilience. Every fold glowed with pride. When she put it on, even the air around her felt different. She didn't look like a broken bride. She looked like a queen. Everyone who saw her gasped. The neighbors, her friends, even strangers passing by couldn't take their eyes off her. "Who made that?" they whispered. "She looks like gold come to life." Safina smiled, not because of the dress, but because she knew now. Her power was never in the fabric, but in her fire. And this time, it was a fire no one could burn. The wedding day arrived, and the air was full of excitement. People filled the chairs, waiting to see the bride. Some knew about the burnt dress. Others had only heard bits and pieces, but no one expected what they were about to see. Then, the music changed. Everyone turned their heads, and there she was, Safina. She didn't wear white, no lace, no veil, no soft silk. Instead, she walked slowly in a golden gown that shined like the sun itself. It wasn't just beautiful, it was bold, powerful. The gold caught the light and made her glow with strength. It was like watching a queen enter her palace, not a bride walking to the altar. Gasps filled the air. Whispers spread through the crowd like fire. "Is that Safina? Why is she in gold? Whoever made that dress is a genius." But no one said a word louder than their eyes. Every gaze followed her. Every heart skipped. Mama Isoken, who once looked down on Safina, could not hide her shock. Her mouth hung open. Her face turned stiff. The same woman who said Safina wasn't good enough couldn't even blink now. Her silence spoke louder than all her past insults. Then Chief Arinze, one of the respected elders, leaned toward another guest and asked in awe, "Who is that woman? She walks like she commands the wind itself." Esosa, standing at the front, waiting, had tears in his eyes. Not like before. These tears were different. He had always loved Safina, but now he saw her with new eyes. She wasn't just the girl he fell in love with. She was a woman who stood tall even when people tried to break her. She didn't come to please anyone. She came as herself, strong, golden, unshaken. He cried not because she was beautiful, though she was the most beautiful woman there. He cried because she was powerful, invincible, unstoppable. Safina reached the front, holding her head high. Her smile was soft, but her presence was fierce. Every person there could feel it. This wedding wasn't just about love. It was about victory, about rising, about turning pain into power. And as the ceremony began, no one remembered the burnt dress anymore. All they could see was the woman who wore gold like armor and walked with fire in her soul. Safina had become more than a bride that day. She had become a legend. Just as the pastor was about to begin the vows, a loud noise came from the back of the hall. Everyone turned around in surprise. It was Ivy, Safina's friend, rushing in, her face serious and her hands shaking as she held a tablet. "I need to show something," Ivy said, her voice loud and clear. People moved aside as she walked to the front, standing between the bride, groom, and the pastor. She took a deep breath and pressed play. A video started playing on the screen behind them. It was from a security camera inside Sosa's family mansion. The guests watched closely, confused at first. Then gasps filled the room. There she was, Mama Isoken, in the middle of the night, holding a can of gasoline. She poured it over something white and soft. Then she brought out a lighter. With a small smirk on her face, she set it on fire. The flames rose fast. The camera zoomed in. It was Safina's wedding dress, the custom-made, hand-beaded, satin-lined white gown that Zubaida had delivered just a few days earlier, burned on purpose. People began to murmur. Some covered their mouths. Others stared at Mama Isoken, who now looked pale and speechless. Esosa turned slowly to face his mother, his heart breaking with disbelief. "How could you?" he whispered. Safina didn't speak. She just stood there, still and strong, like the queen she had become. Her golden dress now held even more meaning. It wasn't just a backup gown. It was proof that nothing could destroy her spirit. Pastor Ife looked at everyone in the hall. He removed his glasses slowly, then cleared his throat. The room fell silent. "This is a wedding," he said gently. "A moment of truth, love, and unity. But what we just saw cannot be ignored. This is no longer about just two people. It's about the weight of truth and what we choose to carry forward. Mama Isaacon tried to speak, but no one listened. Her lies had finally come into the light. The guests stood up, some in shock, some in support of Safina. And Isosa, he stepped forward, took Safina's hand, and looked into her eyes. "No more secrets," he said. "No more pain." Safina nodded, not with fear, but with power. That day, before the vows, the truth came out, heavy and burning. But even then, Safina stood tall, shining brighter than ever. Safina stood still, the golden dress glowing under the lights, her eyes calm but firm. All eyes were on her. Mama Isaacon couldn't meet her gaze. The truth was now out for everyone to see. The video of the burnt wedding dress, the wicked smirk, the fire, it had shocked every guest. But what came next was what no one expected. Safina slowly stepped forward. She wasn't shaking, she wasn't crying. She looked like a woman who had already fought the storm and survived. She stopped right in front of Mama Isaacon and looked her in the eyes. "You tried to destroy my beginning," she said softly, so softly that it made everyone lean in to hear. "But instead, you showed me how strong I really am." Mama Isaacon didn't speak. Her lips trembled, but she had no words. Isosa stood beside Safina, ashamed of what his mother had done, but proud of the woman he was about to marry. Safina reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive, the same one with the video. She walked over to the police officers who had just arrived at the scene. Calmly, she placed it in their hands. "This belongs to you now," she said. "Let justice take its course." She then turned away, not looking back. No insults, no shouting, just quiet dignity. As she walked back to the altar, she held her late grandmother's shawl closer to her body. It smelled like home, like love, like strength passed down through generations. Suddenly someone in the crowd began to clap, then another, and then another. Within seconds, the entire hall was filled with applause. It wasn't clapping for drama. It wasn't for entertainment. It was for Safina's grace, for the way she carried herself, even when hurt. She had every right to scream, to curse, to fight, but instead, she chose peace. She chose honor. She chose to rise above the hate. Even Pastor Ife had tears in his eyes. "This," he said, "is what it means to be powerful without lifting a finger." Mama Isaacon looked smaller now, lost in her guilt. She had wanted to ruin Safina, but all she did was help the world see her light even brighter. That day, Safina didn't just get married. She became a symbol of grace. A woman who taught everyone that true power doesn't come from revenge. It comes from rising, forgiving, and standing tall, even when the world tries to pull you down, and the people would never forget it. The wedding continued, but now it was different. There was a deeper silence, a stronger meaning in the air. The guests sat quietly, their eyes fixed on Safina and Isosa as they stood under the golden arch. This arch wasn't made by any fancy decorator or expensive planner. Isosa had built it himself, with wood, love, and the promise of a new beginning. It wasn't just decoration. It was a symbol, a message, that no matter what had happened, they were standing strong. Safina looked around. Her eyes caught the soft glow of the afternoon sun. It touched the golden fabric of her gown, making it shine even more. It was like her dress was alive, dancing in the light, telling its own story. The story of pain, fire, strength, and victory. Isosa took a deep breath, then held Safina's hands in his. His voice was full of emotion. "Safina," he said, "today, I don't just marry you. I promise you that no fire, no storm, and no mother will ever come between us again. You are my heart, my home, my forever." Tears filled Safina's eyes, but she didn't cry from sadness. These were golden tears, tears of relief, love, and victory. She nodded, then replied, "And I promise to love you through the pain, through the healing, through every rise and fall, because what we have is real, and real love cannot be burnt." There was not a single dry eye in the crowd. Even people who had doubted them before were wiping their tears. The gold on her dress kept glowing, as if it was celebrating with her. Then came the moment. Safina and Isosa turned to face the guests. They were no longer just bride and groom. They were a team, a force, a couple that had faced the fire and walked out even brighter. Hand in hand, they took their steps forward. And as they walked out under the sun, the gold on her gown shimmered like justice itself. Beautiful, powerful, unstoppable. The people didn't just see a wedding. They witnessed a story that would be told again and again, about a girl who dreamed in white, who rose in gold, and who showed the world that no one, not even fire, can destroy a woman who knows her worth. And in that light, Safina smiled, because she knew this was just the beginning. Months passed, but Safina didn't just move on. She rose higher. She took all the pain, the fire, the insults, and turned it into something beautiful. With the support of Esosa and her grandmother's love still alive in her heart, she launched her dream, a bridal line called Ashes and Gold. It wasn't just about gowns. It was about hope, about reminding every woman who had ever been told she wasn't enough that she was more than enough. The gowns were stunning, simple, bold, elegant, but there was more. With every dress, each bride received a letter sharing Safina's story and a mirror. On that mirror, words were written in golden letters. "You are enough, fireproof, and fabulous." Brides cried when they read it. Some had been mocked for being poor. Some had been rejected, just like Safina. But now, they felt seen. They felt powerful. Her bridal shows weren't about wealth or fame. They were about stories. Real women, real strength. And everywhere, people started talking. Who is this Safina? She's the girl who turned ashes into gold. On the day of her biggest launch, the hall was full. Lights, music, laughter. But outside the gate stood Mama Izuken. She wore a heavy coat and dark sunglasses, trying to hide her face. Maybe she came to make peace. Maybe out of guilt. Or maybe just to take credit now that Safina was famous. But the guards didn't let her in. Her name wasn't on the list. And some doors, once closed, stay closed. Inside, Safina stood tall on stage. Her gown sparkled not with diamonds, but with courage. The crowd clapped as she spoke. She lost her white dress, but gained a golden legacy. She was born with fire in her veins. So when the world tried to burn her, she didn't melt. She lit up the sky.